Now, hello there, everybody. How are you? And you are very welcome along once again to my How to Stay Sane in a Pandemic webcast. We've made it to March. Yay! And welcome to springtime, all of you naysayers who don't believe that springtime arrives when it does arrive in February. So you finally caught up and you're now in springtime. So that's good. We're live right now broadcasting on Twitter and on YouTube and on Facebook. So come on in. I can see you all joining. You're all very welcome. Hope you have somewhere comfy to sit for the next 30 minutes and maybe have a drink or a cup of coffee or whatever floats your boat. Welcome also to those of you who watch this back at a later stage. Thank you for joining us. And again, if you are enjoying these webcasts, you would do me a great favor by spreading the word and spreading the links. As I say, once this, there's Caroline Grace Cassidy joining us now. Hello, Caroline. Once this, tomorrow, after this broadcast is done, it will go up on my website. So it'll be available to watch back on barbarascully.com. So as I say, if you want to spread the word about that, that would be indeed wonderful. Okay, so my guest this week, you can see sitting across from me here is Rory O'Neill, who I'm delighted to have on board this week. Rory, as you know, is a performer, drag artist, publican and activist. And Rory, there's been so much love since I said that you were going to be my guest this week from all kinds of quarters, people saying, oh, I love Rory, great. No. So I'm really honoured that you've joined us today. Thank you.
Well, like I said to you when we were just waiting to go on there, it's a very easy ask. I'm sitting in my living room. I don't have to go anywhere. I haven't even bought the putting on real pants. Haven't gin and tonic on the ready.
So you're all good. Listen, yeah. I have to ask you a very important question first, because obviously those who follow you on Twitter as well will probably all be dying to know, did you get your package? And this isn't a euphemism.
Funny you should ask that, because today then, on day 3 of following my parcel around Dublin on its little trips, I was thinking, if that parcel fecking arrives when I'm going to Barbarascully, I will be raging. But it arrived about an hour ago. Yay. And this is what I was waiting for.
Oh, they're very swanky. Very retro. Very 80s.
I like them. And I got a blue pair as well.
I do.
It's a good website, but it's not a local optician brand, so I don't know if I should be telling you, but
and are they prescription glasses? They're not just for your
prescription. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Excellent. I can't see you like this, Barbara. You're just like a
blur. You're probably as well off. Well, if you want to take them off at any time. But I was going to say that if your package hadn't arrived, because I'm sure lots of us were wondering, and the doorbell rings, you would have absolute permission to go and run and get it. It would be too important.
I would have been. Feck you, Barbara. I'm off, and I'm not missing this parcel for the 3rd day in a row. Yeah.
Here it comes. Actually, it's really strange. It's one of the funny things, as you know, you're trying to struggle to find funny things in relation to this whole pandemic. But the fact that I live with there's myself and himself and my 2 my 2 young adult daughters who have been knocking themselves out buying all kinds of shite from all kinds of places. But as a result now, for the first time in years, we know the postman's name, and the postman knows all of our names, and we also know an awful lot of the delivery drivers who arrive. So there's a whole new bunch of people that weren't in our, if you like, sphere of experience before, have now become almost friends.
Well, I'm in a funny part of the city centre where there's very few residents. So I don't know, the parcel delivery courier company people or anything, probably less well than you would. You probably have a gate, whatever, a bit more interaction, whatever, a driveway or suburban, Jesus. Whatever. But because we live in this part of the city centre, which is almost entirely commercial, we've known our postman forever. And sometimes if I go down to the depot to collect a parcel, he'll sort of say, oh, I think there's another one back there as well. If he's there and he sees me. So that's, a benefit to living in a weird part of town.
Reminding me of that song. Do you remember on Sesame Street a million years ago? These are the people in your neighborhood. the people that you meet when you're walking down the street.
Yeah.
Very good. Listen, while you mentioned that, living in the city, I know you also shared on Twitter, and I was very taken with it as well, Leo Shockensee's thread that he did. He woke up, he was suffering from insomnia, I think, and he went out for a walk with his dog at 3 a.m. and took the most amazing photos of the city, especially because it's so misty.
Yeah, it looked like a film set, didn't it? I actually happen to know Leo and follow him on Twitter anyway. He's a friend of mine, but I actually saw it because I think Dara O'Brien, retweeted it. So I actually saw it through Dara first. But they're gorgeous. It made me feel like, weirdly almost as if I was looking at Dublin from abroad because of lockdown and everything. Like, oh God, I missed that. It
That's what I
made
was
Dublin
going
look
to ask you.
magical.
Living in the city when the city is, I mean, obviously it's not quite as ghosty as it looked in Leo's
Mm,
photographs because you had the mist as well as the fact that there was
yeah.
absolutely nobody around. But I mean, obviously the city is a completely different place at the moment than it normally
Yeah.
is. Are you enjoying that or is that kind of sad?
Um, my fella loves it. He's all
Yeah.
whenever we're on the way to the supermarket or we go for our walk on whatever. He's always like, I prefer it this way. And I don't really. It is nice sometimes to see the views that you don't see when there's cars and buses and everything. So it's nice sometimes to sort of get a sense of the scale of O'Connell Street or whatever. But in general, I'm a country boy, and like so many country, boys. What I enjoy about the city is that it's not, the
Yeah.
quiet country. I like all of the, kinetic energy of the city and all of that. So in general, I do miss the sort of kinetic energy. But the other thing is, I've no reason to leave the house except for my little walks. So, or to the supermarket. So I actually don't see it that much anymore, even though I'm living right in the middle of it. So it's a kind of
Right.
a weird sort of thing. The one thing that's very noticeable, though, if you're in the city center, and it's a bad, terrible thing, is homelessness is just so much more obvious now. And, I did wonder at first, is there just a lot more homelessness? But what I really think what it is without the thousands of people walking and the cars and the buses, they're just thrown into relief. And so you see so many homeless people now and the little tent encampments and stuff, which is a relatively new development. I think because of those pop-up tents, you can just put them on concrete or anything or whatever. And that is really sad to see. And it's very much thrown into relief now during lockdown. And I think it's simply because there are no other distractions and nothing else to draw your eyes. So when you see somebody sleeping on the street, it's really unavoidable. So that's
Dark.
a sad, awful thing of it.
Yeah,
But on a
yeah.
nice sunny day, it's you're out for your afternoon walk. The streets are almost abandoned. You feel like the city is to your. There are moments where I enjoy it at the moment,
Or you
but
feel like you are king of the city.
kind of, but just for a
Yeah.
split second, because 99.9 recurring percent of the time, I'm like, get me back the old city I know and love. Yeah.
I mean, there really is a case to be made, though. I think, and I think because I'm deep out here in the suburbs in Cabinteely, and one of the things that we have noticed, and actually, I was reading something by I can't remember what journalist in the Irish Times at the weekend about how this hasn't happened in all of the suburban areas, unsurprisingly enough, but certainly out here. And I'm sure in various places around the city, the suburban towns and villages have really revitalized because people are
Mm.
around during the day, who traditionally would be working or normally would be
Yeah.
working in town. So we've got like coffee shops and cafes and loads of these little kind of Airstream caravans that have opened up in various places, selling coffee. And the council, particularly out here in Dún Laoghaire, have been great putting out like street furniture and places to sit and all the rest of it. But I'm kind of struck by the fact that that's happening out here, but then the city has
It
died
feels
because there's
abandoned
so
a
few
lot of the
people
time.
live in the city.
Yeah, it feels abandoned a lot of the time. Um, and I have a slight bee in my bonnet because, I live in deepest north inner city. I'm just over the river on the north side. It's very commercial. And occasionally when I take my walk over to the south side, I get sort of a bit like, well, look at South William Street and Dawson Street and all that. And they've widened pavements and they've put out street furniture. They've done things. That's it. Yeah, I haven't seen any of this on the north side. I feel like we've been, shafted in all of this. So I would love to see a bit more, attention and love given to the north side, and it now seems like a good time to do it.
Absolutely.
But you're right. The city doesn't have the life it used to have. In the pandemic,
Yeah.
everything feels a bit ghostly. Like you're coming back from the supermarket, especially in the winter, this is very obvious, and the Lewis will go by, and because it's dark outside and the Lewis is lit up inside, you're very aware there's one person on that whole Lewis, and they're just like sliding by almost ghostly.
Yeah.
Maybe in a few years' time, I'll look back and I'll remember all of this with some sort of rose-tinted glasses. Oh, I remember when the Lewis was like a ghost train. But right now, I just hate seeing it.
Yeah, no, I know. That brings me on to, and I know you were on the 6 o'clock show on Virgin Media recently, and I know you also did an interview with the Sunday Independent, and you talked about your own personal experience of all of this last year in the pandemic, and I think you echoed what I'm sure an awful lot of people actually feel, which is that the first lockdown was kind of a bit of crack, and it was almost like having a big long snow day. Do you remember when we had that snowmageddon a couple of years ago, and the lads were in the bunker telling us all to stay home? And I was like, yay, great. Here comes a great excuse to sit in the sofa, drink hot chocolate, watch television, not do anything. Nothing's expected of us. And the first lockdown was a little bit like that. And I think, much like I'm sure we thought it would all be over. And I remember sitting down with my husband and going, by June, this will be sorted and we'll be fine.
Yeah, we were so naive. We were so naive at the time. And I very clearly remember in the first lockdown, like coming back in the supermarket, and it was a lovely sunny days, remember, and the streets are empty. And I remember, saying to my fella and everything, I like being forced to do nothing suddenly, because and I was like, maybe we should just do a week of this every year, because at Christmas, it's not a holiday at all. It's just a different kind of work. That's all it was. And so being forced to do absolutely nothing except go to the supermarket, for a little while was kind of great in a way. There was parts of it that I liked, but that feeling seems so long ago now, because
I know,
that was so long ago now. And a year later, because for example, you use the first lockdown terminology, and I use it too, because that's how we all talk about it. But to be quite honest to you, I couldn't tell you when one lockdown ended, another began, because to me, it's all lockdown. Because even in between lockdowns, I have no reason to be leaving the house except to go for me daily constitutional. Like, I have no work to go to. There's the bar's closed. I don't have any money to be wandering around Grafton Street shopping. So to me, it's just has been one big lockdown. And you mentioned that 6 o'clock show thing. I was flabbergasted at the reaction to that. I thought I was saying just whatever. And then because of the reaction to it, I got a million requests then to talk to, newspapers and write things and whatever. And I said no to most of them, but I said yes to a couple of them, because I was suddenly very aware that all the people in my sort of sectors that are closed were grateful for their sort of side of things to be heard. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do a couple of those things. But I was surprised at that, because I didn't think I was saying anything unusual.
Yeah, I think what you said was really important, because I think that, there has been the other narrative, which is we're all in this together. It's a national effort. We're all making a sacrifice. And, in a lot of ways, my husband is a freelance photographer. He hasn't, most of his work is around events and social stuff. He hasn't worked, other than the odd little bit of job here and there, since last March either. And so that does present, even leaving aside the money end of it, which is very important. But I think to not work for such a long period of time, when you had when you go to retire, you prepare for it for a long time, and you think about it and you plan for it. This was foisted on us with no notice. And also, I think, and possibly particularly for men, because women's lives tend to meander more because of our biology and kids, and that we tend to step back and step forward more. But not to have work, I worry about how it affects you psychologically, because, we are all our identity is tied up so much in what we do for a living.
Yeah, like I'm saying,
that's taken away.
There's like two things about that I feel very keenly. And one is exactly what you're saying. I think, especially if you are, say, like your own fella who, got into a field because he's passionate about photography and all of that. And for me too, I got into the performing and all of that. And when you do that, when it's not just a job that you took on because it pays the bill, and especially when it's a job like photography or performing or whatever, where it's not secure and is never going to be secure. So it's always a risk, and you can only do it if you love it. That those things become super, very much part of your identity. They are who you are in many ways. And so when the work is like that to you, and it's suddenly taken away from you, and it's not like you can sort of pick yourself up and dust yourself off and try again, because you're not allowed. So your work has just been taken away from you. That is an existential crisis after X number of months. Because if if you're not able to be for what you have always thought yourself to be for, then what are you for? There's this kind of existential quality about that that in the beginning you don't think it was. You think you're going to get back to it in a few weeks, whatever. But when it's been a year, and like I don't know if you're on, but there are times now where I can think, do I even know how to put my makeup on anymore? Like have I forgotten there's this kind of sense about it. And then the other thing for me,
well, thankfully,
psychologically, well, the other thing is for me is this sort of helpless quality, because like I said, we chose these careers that are always insecure. So you've always had to fight for gigs and make your own opportunities, and every now and then when it doesn't work, you have to maybe wait tables for a bit or whatever. You're very used to that. And then in my case with the bar too, we opened 6 months before the crash happened, so the first 5 years were so difficult, but at least I was able to try things and try this, and we'll try that, and we'll do this, and we'll do this, keep plugging away at it. But in this situation, it just feels like your hands have been tied and you can't. I understand why. I'm not arguing against the restrictions, but I'm not allowed to fight for the survival of the bar, or I'm not allowed to, fight to get that gig or whatever to keep going. And that is mentally the biggest thing for me. That's the hardest thing for me to be able to deal with. That I'm basically being forced to sit on the sofa. There's a helpless quality about it.
But that's why I think what you said was so important, because I think that anybody whose work is as you have so beautifully described, there is a feeling that you're being somewhat unpatriotic, if you're saying, hang on, this is actually way feckin' tougher for us than it is for you guys who are still, you still have work, and albeit maybe you're working from home, but it's a whole different ball game from you being prevented to be able to do what it is that you
I understand it's difficult for everybody, and everybody has their own circumstances, and God only knows what it must be like to try and homeschool 3 kids while also do a full-time job from your kitchen table. Like, it must be absolute nightmare. But there is a sense that a certain section of the population have sort of been forced to take on a much bigger financial and sort of economic burden than the majority of the population. And I think anybody who's ever suddenly had all your income wiped out or whatever, it's a real shock to the system. And so, imagine having to try and homeschool those kids and also be forced into unemployment for the first time in your life and all that. It's just, it's a shit show for everybody. But it's not the same for everybody. That's all, I would say. It's everybody, it's difficult in every way for everybody, but it isn't the same for everybody. And I think people just need to sometimes be very aware of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. And I think also what's important is that our government need to hear that as well, because, I think sometimes it seems to be kind of hidden, and it seems to be, the arts and entertainment and hospitality, I think, is seen to be a kind of an extra that we can live without. And I know even as a punter, we definitely can't live without it. Tell me another question that I need to ask you then. So Panty has been mothballed. Can I say mothballed? Is that disrespectful to say mothballed? And do you
No,
miss
not at
her?
all.
Or does she come out of the cupboard like every so often just to make sure she still works?
She comes out of the cupboard when she still has, opportunities or reasons to. Um, so every now and then, there's always things, whether they're online Zoom things or whatever. Or say last week, I filmed a thing in real life, all socially distanced and all that, but for the St. Patrick's Day festival.
Oh, great.
So these things crop up. In general, on the upside, for all the Zoom things, I only have to get ready from this part, So I'm sitting here in the wigs and the lashes and everything, but then I've got my sneakers on and a pair of tracksuit on, which I have to because I've also put on weight, quite a bit. During the lockdown and all. So, for example, last week when I had to actually go and meet people in real life in full draggery, I was like, oh God. So I was like digging out the caftans, where are the caftans? I met Sabina Higgins at her. I met Sabina Higgins at her, and she was so perfect and glamorous and skinny. And I was like, oh, that bitch.
Oh God, now you know how I feel most of the time. Caftans, fantastic. Anyway, tell me, one of the things that we do, and I could talk about everything all afternoon, but are you reading? Are you a reader? Like, do you read novels? What do you read?
I am and I amn't, in the sense that I was a voracious reader for 30, 40 years or something. And then the internet really sucked all my attention span away. And now I'm just so ashamed at how few books I read every year, But I am reading something I'm reading two things at the moment. One of them is very boring, but it might be of benefit to somebody out there. About 6 months ago, during all of this, I suddenly got an incredibly bad back, which I'd never had before. It was like an intense sciatica thing.
Right.
And I spent about 5 days lying on the living room floor.
Oh, dear.
It was super bad. And then I went to a few physios about it, and they were all a little helpful, but it just didn't feel like it was doing the thing. And I had the scan, and they said, oh, yes, you have a bulging disc. But at the same time, it's no worse than about 50% of the people your age in the country and whatever. And I am not the hippy dippy type. I'm like, give me all the drugs, send me to the hospital, do whatever you have to do. But eventually, because nothing was really happening, my brother, who's a bit more open to that stuff, he put me onto this thing. It's a book called Healing Back Pain by, what's the doctor's name? Sarno, John Sarno. Healing Back Pain, Mind-Body Connection. And it's actually been excellent. It hasn't fully fixed my problem, but it's really helped a lot. And so I feel guilty for ever being, not believing in some of this stuff. Now, he's a real proper regular doctor, was, for whatever, 40, 50 years in the, medical world in New York. But he was doing a lot of back stuff, and he started to see connections. And just reading the book has really helped the pain a lot, just by reading it and listening to him. And then on the other side, I'm actually now rereading a book I read about 10 years ago. It left a massive impression on me at the time. And, it's a big chunky book, and it's one of those books that's super entertaining, exciting, thrilling, all that, but it's also super educational. And I'm writing something else at the moment, and I wanted to get back into this space about American Indian, Native Americans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it's this incredible book called Empire of the Summer Moon. It's about 10 or 15 years old now or something. Empire of the Summer Moon. It has like a big long subtitle called Kwana, like an Indian chief's name, and the rise and fall of the Comanche Empire. It's amazing. It's historical fact, but it's also written with the sort of the thrill and the power and the beauty of a novel. It's stunning. And excellent. I'm about halfway back reading the second time, and it's just as good the second time. And so currently at the moment, I am living this fantasy of being out on the plains, fighting the bad guys. It's amazing.
Caroline Grace Castillo just said she got married in the car from Empire of the Sun. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I think she probably
jumped the gun there. Empire of the Sun.
Yes, Sun, yeah.
Yeah, about not Hong Kong, but
different
you know,
thing.
the Second World War in Asia and all
Yeah.
of that. You know, this is Empire of the Summer Moon.
Moon. Yeah. Pay attention, Caroline. You're not paying attention properly at all. Come
It's
here.
about
Are you?
combating Indians, and it's amazing. It's incredible,
Yeah. No, that
sweeping,
sounds good. I love a
dramatic,
different.
and an incredible story about a young blonde girl who's sort of stolen by, all totally true. A little blonde girl who's kind of stolen by the Indians, raised as an Indian, marries an Indian chief, has a son, and her son becomes the most powerful Indian chief of all time. Like, it's incredible. Incredible.
Brilliant. Oh, that's very good. All right. So that's a good one. Okay. And do you what about, are you a Netflix merchant or
I'm going to tell you now something, Barbara, that might shock you.
okay.
Until lockdown, I had never, ever watched a box set or any of the big giant series that you're meant to have watched.
Wow.
I'd never watched The Sopranos. I'd never watched the one about the dragons. None of them. Because someone would say, that's really brilliant. And I would think, that is 60 hours of my life. I'm not going to watch that. And I just feel so guilty about it because, you know, the golden age of television, and I was missing all this incredible stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic arrives. And so I started watching some of them and have really loved some of them. But I still have this fear about the big, you know, here's an hour every episode. Now, I've done quite a few and really enjoyed a lot. Call My Agent, the French one, is probably my favorite.
Isn't
so
that
incredible.
beautiful?
Oh, so lovely. But here, my really guilty thing is I like them to be like just a little less thought involved.
Yeah.
And I like to be able to know that if I go to the supermarket and my fella watches an episode without me, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So what I have been doing for the last few weeks is I've been watching every single series from the beginning of Project Runway.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
Well, because it's fun. They have to make things. There's a bit enough drama. Heidi Klum is incredible.
Right.
And then, you know, they make these glamorous things at the end of it. And it doesn't really matter if I miss an episode. I just say, who got kicked out? And then I jump back in. So Heidi Klum has saved me the last few weeks. I'm totally wrapped up in Project Runway, and I feel like I could be tossing out a glamorous gown off the top of my head. You know, give me 30 minutes and, you know, roll a sellotape.
You see, if this lockdown goes on for much longer, that could be exactly what you're doing. You'd be looking for a sewing machine on eBay next so that you can start rolling things up.
I'll tell you a funny story. The moment that I knew that I was actually in love with my now husband was I used to laughingly and jokingly say to him that, you know, that after the apocalypse, you know, when the Mad Max guys who, you know, are violent and horrible come around, you know, killing people, they'd always save me because I'd be good after the apocalypse. I'm good at cutting hair because as a student and everything, I always cut hair and I can still do it. So everybody's going to want to get their hair cut even after the apocalypse.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and I can toss out the odd cookie and from the kitchen and that. And everybody's going to want some entertainment after that. I mean, even post-apocalypse, you need a bit of entertainment. So, and I would sort of say to him, you know, what are you going to do after the apocalypse? Like, nobody's going to want a coder, you know, computer laptop guy after the apocalypse. Exactly. Yeah. And I would say, so like, you know, you're definitely going to be killed by the Mad Maxes. You're going to. And I sort of said to him, we were in the kitchen, I said, like, what the hell are you going to do after the apocalypse? And I was just on my laptop, not really, just being stupid. And I turned around about a couple of minutes later, and he's over the stove looking down, and there's a big tear coming down his eye because he was so crushed that he couldn't think of a reason why they would still want him after the apocalypse. And I didn't flag him about it. And that's when I thought, oh, well, I think I'm in love with this guy because I didn't tear him a new asshole for crying over my apocalypse scenario.
I love that. That's a gorgeous story. Actually, it reminds me of when got me with the days when we used to travel, and my husband is English, and he's now applied finally for his Irish citizenship, but he still is English, and he has his
because obviously I haven't seen him in about a year.
No, he's still around, a bit like you. He's grown a beard, and I don't know who he is anymore.
I would just see him at, you know, events and,
you
know, on red carpety things or whatever.
That's it. That's it. But he, being English, so anytime we traveled as a family, obviously myself and the girls all had Irish passports, and he had his British passport, and we
That's not.
all used to slag him constantly, like, if our airplane gets hijacked, if we meet terrorists, you're fucked, we're fine, because
Yeah.
we can do both things. But nobody wants to have a British passport when things get a bit hot. And we used to say, we are throwing you to the lions. They
Yeah,
can have
the
you.
world.
Come to save us.
Did he get the Irish passport because of Brexit or just?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. Like, Paul isn't a bit interested in current affairs or anything, or politics or anything like that. But I always remember the morning after the Brexit vote in the UK. I woke up and he was sitting in bed looking at his phone, literally with his gob on his lap, going,
Hmm.
"I don't believe they did this."
I
Now
was
it
in
took him a
London at the
while.
time. I was in London at the time working, and so I was in a hotel, and so I woke up and went down to breakfast, and you could just sense in the breakfast room everybody sort of in a kind of shock. And I also just remember feeling really just awkward almost, because it's all like Polish waitresses and
Yeah,
all of that. And then
yeah,
getting a taxi, and of course, London is a world in itself, and of
yeah.
course London voted no, and everything. And the taxi driver just, on a classic London taxi driver rant for 25 minutes about what a fucking disaster it was.
Yeah.
But it was such a weird morning. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he couldn't believe it. And so yeah, he's been threatening now. They don't make it easy to apply for an Irish passport, so he just hadn't had time up until
Mm.
again everything stopped. So he put it all together and we sent it all off. So I think it can take a year or maybe more before he'll hopefully get it. But
When you say they
yeah,
don't make
they
it easy, what do you mean? I would have thought somebody's
oh you've
married to an Irish
you've just
citizen and he's British and.
well, that's what I thought. I thought it would be dead straightforward. But no, I mean, there's all the bank statements, there's all the money end, there's, making sure you're solvent. There's like certificates for this and that and the other, his original birth cert, my birth cert, our marriage cert. There was just
Hmm.
a million things. We had to go and swear an affidavit then that we actually wear. I don't know what we had to swear an affidavit about, but there was a solicitor involved and we had to swear an affidavit about something. And there was just piles upon piles of paper
Hmm.
that we had to assemble. And unfortunately, once you send it in and it takes a good while, if there's one piece that you haven't got right, I think they just send you the whole lot back and you have to start all over again. So, as I say, they certainly don't make it easy, but we'll all be
Hmm.
much relieved because at the moment we just say to him, God, whenever we do get to travel again, you'll be home like hours after us because you'll be
Oh,
stopped in
yeah.
every queue. We'll be flying here, flying there, zipping through airports, and you'll be stuck, and we'll just go on without you. So I think that was one of his main motivations to do it when we ever get traveling again. But I suppose,
Yeah.
where's first on your list of places to go again when we get to go? Do you feel
Um,
confined by not being able to leave the country? Does that make you?
it does, in the sense that, in the before times, I used to travel
The
a
old days?
lot. Um,
Yeah,
like I would do a couple of big trips a year with shows or whatever, and go to Australia every year. Um, so a few of those longer trips, and then lots of shorter ones. And I used to do a lot of work at the Department of Foreign Affairs, and so just being at home longer than a few weeks is a relatively, it's been a good few years since I would even have done that. And as much as I complained about it often at times, I also loved it. Um,
yeah,
and I have to say, I have quite a strong relationship with Australia because I've been there so many times. And if you are going to Australia, you have to make it really worth your while. So I would go for long, trips, whatever. And I know you're going to Perth and all, don't you? And
I do.
and sort of then seeing Australia during the pandemic, where they're relatively unaffected and everything. And of
Yeah.
course, they've just had their 6 months of Australian summer, and so at the moment, I'd love to hop on a plane and go to Australia, even though, of course, as you know, that flight is absolute
Yeah,
fucking nightmare. But
it is a
yeah, I
nightmare.
know. I'd like to be in Australia.
Having said that, I will never, ever, I promise, complain about it again. Because yeah, like you, and I keep visualizing as soon as, because I know a lot of other families who have kids or whatever in Australia, and I keep visualizing that when finally we are allowed back into Australia, that the first flights out of here will just be just full of solid joy and solid, like, people just like so excited to be going, and nobody's going to moan about the long flight or the shit food or the anything. We'll all be just so excited, and it'll
Well,
be
I've done
great.
that flight like a lot of times, and always in economy, and it's so miserable, the flight itself, or the two flights, whatever. And then one time
No
I did this
way.
corporate gig, and they had like tons of money, and they said, let me go business class. And I have to say, it's a bit like the first lockdown. It just transformed your experience of the whole thing. And it turned something that is one of the most nightmarish, awful, horrible endurance things into something really pleasant and nice. And a bit like first lockdown, it forces you for 36 hours just to do nothing. Except every now and then raise your hand and ask for a glass of wine. You know, like, and but having to go back to economy then after that, it's just because once you know how the other world
No, that's not. Yeah, I mean, to me, those flights are all about mind over matter. It's about sitting there going, no, I'm okay. No, my back isn't sore. No, my arse isn't numb. No, I'm fine. Yeah, no, my skin isn't falling off because it feels so dry. No, I'm good. You know, everything is good. And it's really about trying to force yourself to believe that shit, even though it's not good and you don't feel great.
What about that and prescription sleeping tablets? I mean, that's what it's about.
Haven't succumbed to those yet, but yeah, I might.
It's amazing. Just knock yourself out, and then you're shaking awake, 14 hours later for the first stopover.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I have kept you for long enough. We've gone over time. Rory, I could talk to you all afternoon, and it's so lovely to see you. And I wish you the very best, and hopefully we're at the beginning of the end of this shit show. And you know what? I do believe that it will be like the Roaring '20s after
I fucking
the
hope
Spanish flu,
so.
and everybody will go absolutely apeshit once we're allowed to. And you'll
make sure you go apeshit in Panty Bar.
Panty Bar. We'll all be flying in. I'll tell you. Yeah.
And I have to say, the lighting in Cabo is also a step up.
Well, you know what?
Even your lighting is middle class.
Yeah, well, no, you know what? That's my lighting is. Can you? Yeah. Giving away the secrets. Husband sets that up.
Oh, yeah, of course. You've got a photographer husband. He has everything.
You see, there you go. It's one of the perks. Anyway, listen, stay well. Mind yourself.
You too. You look well.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Mind yourself.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'll be back again next week with another guest for you to meet and some more tips on how to stay sane in a pandemic. In the meantime, stay well and stay sane.